This is a real-life TED Talk. This week, some of you may know, is National Custom and Self-Build Week. Sorry, I've got the rebranding there. And we've been trying to beat the drum to try and encourage more people to look into it and try it. And as Sam was saying, earlier this week we had Nick Bowles, the Planning Minister, launching a thing called Right to Build. Now the Tories see this as being one of their big manifesto pledges in the election. Whether you vote for them or not is another thing, obviously, but they are keen, as is the Labour Party and the Lib Dems, to make it a lot easier for people to build their own homes. And you will have a right to a building plot, effectively. They won't make it especially cheap, I don't think. They won't give them subsidised building plots, but they're going out of the way to make it a lot easier for people to build. A few stats to blind you with. 53% of the population would like to build a home for themselves at some stage in their lives. I expect it's more like 93% in here, because you're all architects. 30% want to do it in 5 years. 14% are researching how to do it, how much they can get in the way of a mortgage, what building plots cost, which build system they want to use. That's 7 million people in Britain. This is why the politicians are interested in it. These votes, guys, is a good connection here. And there's, of that 7 million, 1 million want to do it in the next 12 months. Now that sounds great, but the reality at the moment is that 99% of them won't achieve it, because we build about 10,000 homes a year this way in the UK at the moment. So the other 990,000 get pretty pissed off because they can't make their projects happen. The big hurdle is land. You cannot find a building plot for love and money. It's hard enough out in rural areas, but in cities and urban areas it's nearly impossible. So what can you do about it? Well, pick it up on Sam and Christine's presentation. Go to Berlin. You'll get an architectural hard-on. You will not believe what you see there. In nearly every street there are blocks of apartments that look fantastic with really happy people living in them. They built 5,000 homes there in the last 5 years this way. 300 different groups of people have got together to deliver the homes. They're built, they're not drawings that architects do that never get built. These are stuff that is being built. Typically they work out a quarter cheaper than anything anybody else can afford any other way. It's so compelling. Go to Almere in Holland. Almere is the Milton Keynes of the Netherlands. It's a bit of a shithole in many respects, but they built 4,000 self-built homes there. And whilst the developers' housing is selling really slowly, there's people queuing for 3 days to buy the building plots to build their own homes. And picking up on other contributions, there are very few rules in Almere, so you can build pretty much anything. There may be a limit on the ridge height, but in most other respects you can get on and do just what you want. You can clad it in pretty well anything. When I used to, years ago, was a journalist on building design, and after that I edited a magazine called Planning. When I heard about Almere, I thought it was going to look like some sort of, Soweto shanty town, fall into pieces. It's absolutely fantastic. Planners have got this thing in their heads about sort of rigid street lines and uniformity, and you go there and it's incredibly diverse, and 95% of it is pretty sound and sensible, 5% of it's pretty bonkers, but add it all up, it looks amazing. So go to Almere, you can go on the ferry from somewhere in East Anglia, it's very cheap to get there, go that way, it's definitely worth going. Just a quick plug, tomorrow we launch a competition called Self-Build on a Shoestring in the City. Last year we ran a similar competition, it was for a single house. This one's for people like you to design 20 homes in an urban plot, not dissimilar to this one. It's on our NASCA website, find out all about it, it's a £5,000 prize. And Canny and others were quite involved in our Self-Build on a Shoestring competition last time round. And I think it's been great at sort of raising awareness. There we showed that you could build a house, very decent house for £50,000. In fact, the winner, you built a 100 square metre house for £41,000, nearly passive house standards. If you want to get inspired, go and look on the Self-Build portal. There's a guy in Ireland who built a house for £21,000. It is cheap to build houses. You've all been conned by the big adverts in the Sunday Times property supplement where you think houses cost hundreds of thousands of pounds. You can build yourself a very simple house for 50 to 100 grand. And I'd urge more of you to do it. How is it going to happen? Picking up on some of the education questions earlier on. I think we need to sort of reinvent community architecture. Years ago, donkeys years ago, when I was a journalist on BD, there was a guy called Rod Hackney, some of you may remember him. He was the president of the RIBA for a while, but he initiated a whole push to get architects involved, not just in designing buildings, but in sort of enabling communities and making stuff happen on the ground. He didn't turn out any epic, iconic, Sterling Prize award-winning buildings, but he did put roofs over the heads of lots of people, and the people in the communities that he worked with were pretty thankful for it. And I think that's a really fundamental role for architects. The final thought from me, in just under a year, there's going to be an election, and you will have politicians knocking on your door. Ask them what they're doing to make it easier for people to build their own homes. They realise it's an election issue. They can get votes from people like you. You must vote. Don't sit on your asses and do nothing. There is an opportunity, I think, like there's never been before, to build your own home. The planning system's changing. There's more finance available. There's twice as many building societies are offering mortgages now. And the government is going to deliver building blocks. There's already about 5,000 building blocks coming down the line. I think in 5 years' time there'll be 10 or 20,000 building blocks a year coming down the line. So it's going to happen. But if you don't keep the pressure on the politicians, they'll easily forget it. I think it was Sam mentioned the National Planning Policy Framework. This is not a terribly ripping read, but it's quite important. Paragraph 159 in there says every local authority has got a duty to measure the demand there is for people who want to build their own homes. Most planning departments have spotted this, but they have to measure the demand. And then when they see a demand, they've got to make provision for that demand, which in simple terms means if there's 500 people knocking on the door saying we want somebody to build, they have got to allocate that land for you. If there's only 2 knocking on the door, they'll ignore you. So you guys have got the power to make it happen. That's enough for me.
That's great.